In this lesson, I will show you how to read and write to a file. Now, this lesson will not cover everything about reading and writing from a file, since we have yet to cover arrays. Once we learn arrays, it will make outputting to a file much easier. To begin with, we do need to include something at the top, which is number include fstream, which stands for file streaming. The IO stream is in and out streaming, and well, we just have our basic string. Alright, first off, if we're going to read from the file, which is the first thing I'm going to cover, hold on, I still have previous programs still open. We are going to define a if stream. Now this is a data type. If stream stands for inFile stream. Therefore, the name that I'm going to give it is inFile. To assign it a specific address, I'm going to say inFile dot open, and I'm going to open a specific file, which I am going to do names.txt. Sure, why not? So I'm just going to make a file that has a whole bunch of different names in it. At this point, I've already created a variable which is able to access data from a file called names.txt. Unfortunately, we haven't created this file yet. Let's go ahead and create it. I'm going to right click on the source.cpp file, open the containing folder, which is opened it on this side. And that's very bright. Notice that, yeah, that's too bright. There we go. Notice that we're in our source destination. This is where our CPP is at. That is where I'm going to right click, create a new text document. Now notice when I created a new text document, it does not do new text document.txt. There is a difference between whether it does show it or if it does not show it. Since mine does not show it, I just need to call it by its name, which is names. Notice it's just names, what it says on the left side here. If it did say before the .txt, I would have to name the file names.txt. So right now I'm just calling it names, and it knows it's a text document. I'm going to open it up, and open it on my left. I'm going to put Nick, Joe, Tom, Mike, short names, Jess, it's for Jessica, and let's just leave it at that. Sure, someone might be called Jay. Okay, I'll leave it there. File. Save. Alright, now I have my file of names. Great. I am going to create a string, and any variable name I want. Right now I'm going to call it name. I am going to input name, in file name. Now, be aware that if I were to ask the user to input their name from the keyboard, it would be a cin and then wherever I want to save it. Well, instead of getting it from the keyboard, I'm getting it from the file. So you could consider this the same way used as the way you use the cin. So your inFile name. Now, if I cout, not quotes, name, notice what it will output. Nick. If I run the program again, once again, Nick. So it will keep on reopening the file, and the first name on the file was Nick, therefore it output Nick. Well, what happens if I do this a few times? Now it has inFile, the first name from the file. I see it out. inFile, the next name on the file. I do not need to tell it give me the next name. It goes sequentially from the file. So it starts reading from the file and it will find the very next string that is in that file and give it to you. Now a string in this case is defined as anything that does not have spaces. So if I put Nick Gutierrez, it's only going to receive Nick. Okay, so at this point we have not covered how to get the entire line. Alright, so what happens if I continue this trend? Alright, I've gotten all the way to J. Let's see if I get one more person from here. Notice it's still giving me the same data. I'm going to do 3 more times. So be aware of this. Once it reaches the end, it does not give you the data expected. It does not say you're already at the end of the list. It does not say anything of that. Personally, if you notice, I had to copy and paste this section several times. Since we've already covered loops, how about I write this in a loop? Let's say I'm going to do it 5 times. And let's see how this runs. So using a loop, I was able to inFile the name, see out the name. So I got Nick first, output Nick. I got Joe, output Joe, and so forth. How many times should I do this? At this point, I do not know how many times to do the loop. Therefore, once again, we get to the same issue. How can I determine when I am at the end of the file? Well, there's several ways to do it. Okay, fine, I'll do it this way. I'll show you this condition. Horrible way to do it, I know. Nick, Joe, Tom, Mike, Jess, Jay. So while it does inFile name, so it marked this as true because it did find something in the file, it keeps on running. So this is a very creative way of doing this. I don't recommend it, but as you can see, it works. I'm going to get a lot of students that are going to try this. And okay, if you really want to try it, you will encounter some problems with it eventually, especially if you're not only getting one piece of data each time you go through the loop. If you're trying to input several, then it might cause some problems. So there's several different ways to do this. Wow. Okay, let's not erase that. Notice what it says. I said that you're supposed to go as long as it's not at the end of the file. Well, while not inFile dot end of file. Okay, so this is a function that is already made by our fstream, so we know when it's at the end of the file or not. Another creative way to do this is if I go straight to our names. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 6 names. So what if the very first thing I put in here is the number 6? Save it. And I am going to first notice the very first number that was in the file is going to go inside num. So now this thing is going to keep on going while x is less than num. So while x is less than 6, remember since it starts at 0, it's going to go from 0 to 5, which is 6 times. Let's find out. Nick, Joe, Tom, Mike, Jess, Jay. So all three function. I like this third method because it allows us to determine the size of the loop. And if I were to increase that size at any point, such as if I have 5 different bank accounts, and then I decide, you know what, I'm going to create another bank account. Well, now the number of bank accounts I have is 6. So if I'm trying to save it back to the file, including the new bank account, I could start the file off with the number 6 and output all the first 5 bank accounts and then output the 6th one at the end. So next time I read in from the file, it's going to have the number 6 because that's how many I have. Alright, so those are different ways that you can do it. Be aware that if our file contain different information, such as Nick, and I'm going to start putting something like GPAs. Okay, so Nick, what is your GPA? It's a 4.0, of course. Joe, he's also got a 4.0. Tom, a 2.2. Mike, a 2.3. Jess, a 3.5. And Jay, 1. Notice it doesn't have the 1.0. Let's see how the computer reads that. So now the new way that I'm reading this, there are still 6 accounts. Nick and the 4.0 belong together. So it's got 6 people. I'm going to go ahead and the first thing I get is the num. Next, I need to create a double because it's a 4.0, so it's a double GPA. It's going to inFile name, inFile GPA, cout name equals sure, and then cout GPA equals, and just for fun separate them so that you could tell the difference between them. Let's see what it will output. Now it says Nick GPA is 4. Notice that it took off the 0.0. I have not shown you how to format the numbers, but if it's a 4.0, it'll show you a 4, a 4. Here's the 2.2, 2.3, 3.5, and the 1 from the file turns into a 1 here. So if you want to receive different data, just notice the pattern of the data is first it's a name, then it's a GPA, and that's probably what you should be doing in the loop as well, getting a name and the GPA for each member in there. Okay, so this is how you inFile. Once you're done infiling everything, in order for you not to get many errors, because there might be errors which occur if you're going to use the same file more than once, you should close the file. So inFile, capital F, inFile.close. Now be aware, I'm going to click on this once. All of these are just variable names. I could have called it ifstream instead of cin fin. So file in. Sure. It's up to you how you want to do it. The way I was taught was in with a capital F to distinguish that it's from a file. So inFile, so that's what I've been always doing whenever I code. Now down here I'm going to say out of stream out file. If stream is inFile stream, so of stream is outFile stream. So this is going to go out to the file. let's go ahead and say outFile.open. Let's call it passing.txt. Notice it gave me a little squiggly here. The reason why, this is capital, this is not. That was unintentional. Okay, now that I already have this information here, unfortunately, I cannot use all the information because when I received Nick and I got the 4.0 and I output it to the screen, I went back up and I overwrit what's inside of name. So I cannot use that name again. Nick is no longer saved anywhere. So I cannot say what's passing or not after the loop. I would have to go inside the loop and as they're passing, output them to the file. So this is going to get a little bit complicated. Later on, once we cover arrays, we're able to save all the data from the file and then use a separate loop to analyze that file. So right now, I'm just going to move this up to where I created my if stream. So now I created an if stream called names.txt, the file. Of stream is going to save to the file called passing.txt. Now, here's something that happens when you run the program. Right now, there is no such thing as passing.txt. But if I were to run it and look at the folder, notice passing was created. So once I write this code and I run my program, if the file does not exist, it will create it for you. Here's another thing to note. I'm going to open it once again, go into passing, and I'm going to say, yay, okay, sure. And I'm going to save this. So inside of passing, if you can see here, it's got yay. I'm going to run my program. I'm going to open up that file one more time. Passing is empty. So whenever you open a file for writing, it will open it up and erase all the contents, and it's ready for you to start writing in it from the top, which makes it a little bit confusing. So later on, if we wanted to save all the data once again onto here, we'd have to manually, well, not manually, but in a loop, start outputting data to the file once again. Such as if we have 5 accounts and we want to add one more account to the file, we have to rewrite all 5 accounts that used to exist there plus the new one. It gets a little tedious until we learn how to append to a file, which is later. Okay, so let's go ahead and decide what's going to go inside this file. I'm going to inFile the number of users there are. It's going to go that many times. I'm infiling, I'm getting their names, their GPAs. Now what I'm going to do here, I am going to if GPA is greater than a 2, let's make it greater than a 2.5. Alright, so if the GPA is greater than a 2.5, I am going to outFile. So this is the same as a cout. The way I cout to the screen is the way it would cout to the file. So I want it to output just the name, and then I want it to go to the next line, then outFile the GPA, and then go to the next line. Next, afterwards, I'm going to outFile.close. I'm done with the file once it went through all the members, checked which ones have GPA greater than a 2.5, output them to the file. Run it. Okay, so these are all the users: Nick, Joe, Tom, Mike, Jess, and Jay. When I look at the passing, Nick with a 4.0, Joe with a 4.0, Jess with a 3.5. Okay, so that's the difference between input and output. Now, if I was to do the following, outFile name equals name, be aware that everything I write on there the same way as I did the cout will be displayed inside here. Unfortunately, if I try to save to a same file as names, it needs to save it in the same format. This one says name equals Nick, whereas the names file just has Nick. So make sure the format is correct so that when you reuse the file, it does not give you any problems. And you could as well, this could be the same thing as a report as to who's passing, who's failing. Maybe you could write another outFile, such as outFile 2. Who's failing. Everyone else, if they're not passing, it's going to outFile 2, which outFile 2 is the other location, which is the failing one, and outfiling the name, outFile 2, the GPA. I'm going to remove this part. Alright, so if GPA is greater than 2.5, it will outFile, else it will outFile 2. Let's see what that looks like. Great. I also forgot to close. It won't really affect you much here, but it will affect you later on. Alright, one more time. Open containing folder. These are the ones passing, Nick, Joe, and Jess. These are the ones failing, Tom, Mike, and Jay. Great. Now you have the ability to get a file and split that one file of names into people who are passing, people who are failing. And as this file changes, so this person magically now is a 2.7, save. If I were to run the program again afterwards, my two files have now been modified to include Tom with passing, and Tom is no longer failing. So that's awesome. This concludes how you inFile and outFile. That should be enough for all of 1436 type material, as well as some of 1337. Thanks.